I will proceed now to the next piece of business, which is Leaders' Questions under Standing Order 36. We welcome Minister McGrath, and we call on Deputy Pearse Doherty, please.
Let me begin by wishing our colleague Jennifer Whitmore a speedy recovery and look forward to welcoming her back in the benches. I read this morning that she was taken to hospital, and wish her all from these benches a speedy recovery. Can Corlia agus Ara a rare Twitishki RTE investigates in me usage ufasa and crueltacht agus an drochorul capel an shamlas a wanya toganya to Cadius instead show. Agus chasti and grivu loichra on me usage a whirishker agus kahi and gliomlan her in the dini ta fragrasha ni fager link laku lishan crueltacht a hanik mit an Clare television a rare agus kahi screwdu loichra ave imon again realtas. Minister, last night RTE Investigates reported shocking abuse and cruelty at our only licensed abattoir at Shannonside Foods Limited in Straffan, County Kildare. Now, this mistreatment, it was very distressing for a lot of people, but it included the repeated beatings of dying horses. And in one instance, Minister, a fallen horse, unable to get back on its feet, was thrust with a pitchfork into its side. The horse died hours later after its inflicted suffering. Now, these appalling incidents were filmed in the buildings used by Shannonside Food Limited before horses are sent across to the kill room in the slaughterhouse, which is supervised by the Department of Agriculture. The Department of Agriculture has somebody on site. Professor Chris Elliott of Queen's University Belfast, he led the independent review of the British food system after the 2013 horse meat scandal, and he said it was nothing like he had seen or experienced before. Breaking all regulations on the treatment and welfare of animals, he rightly called it out as a scandal. Anyone who watched last night's documentary will have been distressed and appalled. And this country has a great love for horses. I know those with special needs and autism and the comfort they get and support from horses. Indeed, many people refer to them as angels with hooves, and they demand respect and care. What was reported last night demands immediate action, and it demands accountability, Minister. And I want to commend the journalists who brought this to the public's attention, this cruelty, this mistreatment to light. It has been uncovered that approximately 2,000 horses were slaughtered in Shannonside Foods Limited in Kildare last year alone, with 2/3 of them bred for the horse racing industry. Now, the Department of Agriculture have said that they have staff on the premises during which those horses are slaughtered at this site. They also tell us that there were no welfare issues noted on the days when this mistreatment took place. And a question that so many people are asking this morning is how this mistreatment happened under the very nose of the Department of Agriculture. What is clear is that the law has been broken, and I understand that the Department, that the Gardaí, have begun an investigation on foot of the shocking findings of RTE Investigates, and I welcome that. But the question must be asked whether the supervision of this site was adequate, with the cruelty and the abuse taking place literally a yard's throw away from the slaughterhouse in which the department official was sitting in and supervising. People are asking, how could it be that this building, just literally yards away, didn't fall under the remit of the Department of Agriculture? What was also raised was the potential for compromise of the human food chain, with evidence of identity falsification and with one animal welfare officer inserting false identification microchips into the horses. So can I ask you a couple of questions? Will you ensure that the full weight of the law is brought down on those responsible for the cruelty and mistreatment that was reported last night? What are you going to do to enhance supervision to ensure that this never happens again? And have you been in contact with European counterparts regarding the possible contamination of human food chain as a result of the misidentification and laundering of Irish horses?
Minister McGrath.
Thank you very much, Count Corlin. Thank you, Deputy Doherty. And can I join with you in wishing our colleague, Deputy Jennifer Whitmore, all the best. I didn't realise that she had taken ill, but all of our thoughts are with her today. And can I also briefly Ceann Comhairle, just congratulate the fantastic 4x400 women's relay team in the European Championships. A phenomenal success, winning the silver medal. Sophie Becker, Phil Healy, Rashida Adeleki and Charlene Maudsley. We're all so proud of them. 2 gold medals, 2 silver medals now. A phenomenal haul. And just to hear the young kids on the radio this morning, they will undoubtedly be inspired by the incredible success. We're all so proud of them. Deputy, thank you for raising the RT Investigates programme on prime time last night, which I did have an opportunity to watch, and like you, I was sickened and appalled by what I saw. The mistreatment of beautiful animals, and I think it's important to say that there's no question that the treatment that we witnessed last night is not representative of the wider equine industry and is not representative of the love and the care that owners of horses display every single day for their animals around this country. And I know that all of those people who love their animals, who love their horses and care for them deeply will have been appalled and shocked by what we witnessed last night. I do want to join with you in acknowledging the tremendous work of Conor Ryan, a fantastic investigative journalist with RTE, and the whole team at the Primetime Investigates. It is an example of public service at its best, and we owe them a debt of gratitude for the work that they have done. There has been contact in recent weeks between RTE and the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine. So the department initiated an investigation into this issue some weeks ago, and that work is ongoing at this point in time. You asked a specific question about the role of the Department of Agriculture inspectors. It would appear at this point that the appalling mistreatment that we witnessed on our television screens was happening in a holding building, not in the slaughterhouse itself, which is a regulated area and where the department inspector would have been present. But all of that now is the subject of a thorough investigation from the Department of Agriculture, and that work is underway. The government unreservedly condemns the scenes that we witnessed, and the full force of the law will be applied where breaches are proven in the court of law, and we need to allow that process now to take its course and not to say anything that would be prejudicial to those investigations. And clearly Garda Síochána are very much aware of what has happened here and are taking the appropriate action as well. There were a number of wider issues that came to the fore in the programme in the context of traceability, the use and misuse of microchips, and indeed fake passporting in respect of horses. And that does raise concerns about public health as well as animal welfare. If animals ended up in the European Union food chain that shouldn't have because of chemicals that had been injected into them previously, then that is a cause of real concern. And it was evident last night that the European Commission are very actively working on this issue. There is engagement between the Department of Agriculture and the European Commission, and there is full cooperation by all of the relevant national authorities with the work that is underway at a European level. Our priority here is to protect animal welfare, but also to protect public health, and serious concerns arise in respect of both following the scenes that we witnessed last night.
Thank you, Minister. Deputy Doherty.
Yeah, thank you, Minister. Look, and I agree. I think anybody who watched that programme last night couldn't be but shocked and appalled and sickened to their core at the images, the distressing images that were presented in that RTE Investigates programme. And this morning I'm trying to struggle to find out just some information, Minister, and you maybe can shed some light on it. Is this abattoir, it's our only licensed abattoir in the state, is this still operating? Is this business as usual? Is this company still operating this abattoir this week? Will there be slaughtering of animals? Does the Department of Agriculture still only have supervision on the slaughterhouse, yet the building just a couple of yards away where the cruelty was happening, where the images were shown to us last night, that they don't have oversight in it because it's technically not an official part of the building? So we have to obviously let the Gardaí conduct their investigation, but there is a responsibility in us to ensure that practices such as animal welfare officers being shown to us all, inserting false identification microchips into horses, the beating and the stabbing with a pitchfork of a dying horse, the whipping of horses.
Thank you,
it is
Deputy
absolutely intolerable. So I would like to ask you, with all of the other issues that have to be dealt with, the passports, the identification,
Thank you, Deputy.
is this business still going to continue? Is the government still happy for the business to continue as it is? And do we have now oversight of all buildings on that yard? Thank you.
Minister.
Thanks very much, Deputy. So there is a full investigation underway. It has been underway for a number of weeks. This is a regulated environment, the abattoir, where the slaughtering was taking place. And just to be clear, the animal welfare rules apply everywhere. They apply in the holding area as well, even if that is not the area where the inspection was actually taking place, which is in the slaughterhouse itself. But in the holding area, the same animal welfare rules apply. And what we saw on our television screens exposed by RT Primetime Investigates was abhorrent to anyone who has any shred of decency and any love of animals would have been appalled by it. And that is why the full force of the law will be applied here. This investigation needs to be allowed to take its course, and the Department now are on this in every respect that we would expect them to be, including with direct engagement, supervision and regulation of this particular commercial premises.
Thank you. Duncan Smith.
Thank you. Minister, just before I begin, also to send the best wishes of the Labour Party to Deputy Jennifer Whitmore. Minister, last night's RT Investigates exposed some shocking practices in the Irish horse racing industry, focusing on how horses, most of them racing thoroughbreds, are treated in the final period of their lives. After a life in the public spotlight, many of them, and being worked, they are then entering what appears to be a very murky chain. It's nearly 150 years since Anna Sewell wrote Black Beauty about the appalling treatment of horses in Victorian England. Yet here we are again, with serious questions to be asked about what happens when a horse is retired, with traceability issues for up to 20,000 animals a year. There was a famous ad once in Ireland asking who's taking the horse to France. What this scandal shows us is that we still don't know, and we don't know who is watching them. This is a sector that receives gigantic levels of funding from the Exchequer through a ring-fenced statutory fund. But we now have a clear sense of the murky and alleged and illegal practices that are going on. Our eyes should have been opened when the horse meat scandal exploded in 2013. Now we have evidence of alleged illegal activity at the one processing plant in Kildare. Microchips being inserted into horses to create false identities. The system, Minister, is clearly broken and being abused, and all under the nose of the Department of Agriculture. The safety of the human food chain is not being taken seriously. The only conclusion to be drawn from using false microchips and spray paint to change the hair colour is that these animals wouldn't pass otherwise. Human health is being put at risk and horses are being abused. We recognise that the Horse and Greyhound Fund supports thousands of jobs in the sector, many of which are critical to the rural economy. But we must demand the highest standards, standards that are nowhere near being met. What has emerged is a major reputational blow again for Ireland and calls into question the ongoing approach of the government to protect the status quo. Over the last 2 years, the Labour Party has tabled amendments to the Horse and Greyhound regulation. What we've asked for is a full independent review to see how best to support these sectors, those involved in it and rural communities it supports, but also, critically, how the highest standards of animal welfare are implemented and complied with. What emerged last night raises serious questions for the Department of Agriculture and for Horse Racing Ireland, who appear to be asleep at the wheel. If RTE hadn't carried out their investigation, would anything have been exposed or changed, and what would be happening in that abattoir today? We've also called for a review to look at how the rights of workers in the sectors can be improved and the need for a sectoral employment order to set minimum rates of pay and conditions. Low rates of pay and insecure work leave people vulnerable to unscrupulous practices and pressure to turn a blind eye to what's going on. So, Minister, What will be done to once and for all stamp out illegal practices that have been uncovered again in the horse sector? Will animals be allowed to continue to enter Shannonside foods until we are certain these practices are not ongoing? Are there animals going in there today, Minister? Do you believe that the Department of Agriculture and Horse Racing Ireland are fit for purpose? And do you concede now that there must be a review into the Horse and Greyhound Fund, including animal welfare practices?
Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Smith. And I can assure you that any illegal practices will be dealt with using the full force of the law. And I agree with you that the highest standards must apply throughout the whole equine industry. And I know you haven't done this, and I think it would be wrong for anyone to seek to portray that what we witnessed last night on RT Primetime Investigates is representative of the wider equine industry, because I don't believe it is. I genuinely do not believe it is. And yes, the government does support the equine industry because it is a very important part of the Irish economy, and it's a very important part of our society as well. It contributes almost €2.5 billion in economic output every year and supports almost 30,000 jobs across the Irish economy. And these jobs, as we know, are particularly important in the regions and around rural Ireland. Almost €16 million of the funding the state gives to HRI is ring-fenced for welfare and indeed for integrity. So animal welfare and integrity is specifically funded, and the government does insist on the highest standards throughout the system. Clearly, what we witnessed last night is evidence that that is not the case everywhere, and that will be dealt with. There is a full-time veterinary presence in the slaughter plant on the days on which slaughter takes place, and ante-mortem, post-mortem and identity checks are carried out in accordance with the legal obligations. And I am assured that the Department takes any issues of non-compliance with welfare or traceability rules extremely seriously. And that is why, as soon as this matter was brought to their attention through the contact RT had with the Department in recent weeks, a formal investigation was initiated and is now underway, and we have to allow that to take its course. And we are satisfied that sufficient statutory powers are there, and indeed very strong statutory penalties for any proven breach of the rules in this regard. And the Department takes this with the utmost seriousness.
Denis Smith.
Minister, can you give a categoric guarantee that this is not happening today? That there's vet now in Shannonside every day, not just when the slaughter is happening. And animal welfare, like, we're putting €95 million of taxpayers' money into the Horse and Greyhound Fund, €76 million going to Horse Racing Ireland. Animal welfare is not just about animal welfare on the gallops or in the paddocks or the stables or the horse racing course. It's from cradle to the end, and that is being failed here. So we don't know if there are other animal rights abuses, and we can't have confidence that this is the only place that it's falling down at all. So this is a massive issue. The amount of money, the amount of taxpayers' money that's going into this, for anyone who watched that show last night, Primetime Investigates, would have had their stomach turned by the practices that they witnessed. So we need a categoric guarantee, Minister, that this is not happening today, and that we can't wait for an investigation to conclude. This practice has to stop now. And we've called for the betting levy to be increased to provide funding for other sports and for a fairer allocation of taxpayers' money in this area. And what's happening today is only adds further power to those calls. We need higher standards across our equine industry.
Thank you, Deputy Minister.
Thank you, Deputy. Just to be clear, the funding that is provided by the state is primarily for horse racing, for thoroughbred racing, a very important part of our economy and a really important part of the fabric of regional and rural Ireland. And I do not for a moment believe that what we witnessed in RT Primetime Investigates is representative of the wider equine industry. And I think it is important that we all put that on the record, because there will be a lot of people in the industry today who are very hurt and who are angry that the reputation of the wider industry gets called into question because of the practices of a very, very small number of people. The holding area in question is under investigation. that is being actively managed at this moment in time. And on any day that there is activity in the abattoir, a Department of Agriculture vet is present on site, and that work continues in parallel with this investigation, which is being afforded the level of priority by the department that you would expect.
Deputy Denis Naughten, please.
Thank you, Ceann Comhairle. Minister, in Ireland, cancer remains one of the leading causes of death, and timely access to new and effective treatments is crucial for improving the survival rates and the quality of life for patients. However, delays in accessing these treatments has become a significant issue, adversely impacting on patients' health and these survival rates. Currently, the approval process for cancer drugs in Ireland involves prolonged assessments by bodies such as the Health Products Regulatory Authority and the National Centre for Pharmacoeconomics. But this is after these drugs have already been evaluated for both safety and effectiveness by the European Medicines Agency. As a result, these lengthy and complex approval processes lead to significant delays. Now, Minister, according to the IDA, Ireland is the third largest net exporter of pharmaceuticals in the world, and yet it is one of the slowest countries in Europe to make these innovative medicines available to Irish patients. In terms of new cancer medicines, the wait in Ireland for these drugs is on average 673 days post the European Medicines Agency authorisation. Minister, that's 22 months. In contrast, other EU countries can make these medicines available to patients in as little as 102 days, while still managing budgets and conducting value for money assessments. It's important to note that it is only public patients who are left waiting 2 years or longer for access to these new medicines. This widens the divide in Ireland's two-tier health system because patients with health insurance can have immediate access to many of these drugs once they are approved by the European Medicines Agency. Minister, if we're serious about delivering on sláinte care and ensuring that patients receive treatment based on medical need, we must raise public patient access to life-saving drugs to the accessibility standard of patients with private health insurance. At least in part, these delays are due to inadequate staffing, resulting in files sitting on desks awaiting assessments, or what is known as processing dead time. Tragically, Minister, there couldn't be a more apt phrase, because in reality, these delays mean patients, particularly those with aggressive or advanced cancers, may not receive potentially life-saving drugs in time. Consequently, their chances of survival diminish and their quality of life deteriorates. Minister, by addressing these unacceptable delays, we can ensure that patients receive the timely and effective treatment they deserve, improving their chances of survival and quality of life.
Thank you very much, Deputy Naughten, for raising what is a very important issue. And the first point I want to make is that the government is committed to ensuring that patients in Ireland get timely access to new and innovative medicines. And in my time in the Department of Public Expenditure and Reform, this was an issue that we consulted and worked very closely with Minister Donnelly and his colleagues in the Department of Health, and we provided ring-fenced funding to ensure that new medicines could be made available in Ireland. So 148 new medicines have been approved in the last 3 years. That's based on the €98 million of new medicines funding, with total expenditure of €327.5 million to the end of 2023. And this has facilitated the introduction of 61 new cancer medicines in Ireland, bringing the total spend on cancer drugs in the last 3 years to over €600 million. So, for example, in 2021, we provided €50 million of ring-fence funding. That allowed 52 medicines to be approved, half of which were for cancer. In 2022, a further 30 million, and that allowed 60 medicines to be approved. 18 of these were for cancer. And last year, from €18 million funding, 36 medicines were approved, and 17 of these were for cancer. And of course that funding goes into the base, so that is a permanent funding, recurring funding every year, and once a particular medicine is approved, then it's essentially demand-led, and the funding will be provided to meet that demand. So that funding is in the base. In addition, you've made a relevant point in relation to staffing. We have provided an additional 34 staff across the pricing and reimbursement process. Now, funding was provided in the budget last autumn, and this year the HSE will launch an application tracker to increase transparency in the medicines assessment process. There is very close collaboration and a very good working relationship between the government and the industry on this issue. The Irish Pharmaceutical Healthcare Association engages on an ongoing basis with the Department of Health. This issue does get raised with me by IDA clients when I meet with them, and I am satisfied that the work that is well underway and the progress that we have made so far will be built upon, and we will continue to improve access to new innovative medicines here in Ireland, including for cancer. And when you look at the overall numbers, as I'm required to do in my job, almost €3 billion is being spent on new medicines. So it's vital that the HSE does robustly assess the offers from industry and maximises the use of its resources to purchase as many new medicines as possible, and that work will continue.
Thank you, Minister. Deputy.
Minister, patients with rare diseases face even greater challenges in accessing new treatments, or orphan drugs as they're often called. On average, they wait nearly 26 months. This delay is especially tragic, as about 30% of children with the rare disease pass away before their 5th birthday. The impact of these delays on patients with rare diseases, Minister, is profound. How can we defend a situation where these children may wait up to half of their short lives to access Irish manufactured medication that could prolong their life? We must prioritise the needs of patients with rare diseases and ensure that they receive timely access to treatments that could offer them the best hope of quality time with their loved ones. Minister, why not use the access for these children to these vital drugs as a pilot case to resolve the blockages in accessing Irish manufactured drugs for Irish patients? By doing so, we can make a significant difference to their lives and that of their families.
Minister.
Thanks very much, Deputy. And this is a priority area for the government, and it's one I'm very familiar with. I know very well companies like BioMarin, who operate in my own constituency in Cork and who focus on the manufacturing of drugs for rare diseases, orphan drugs, and we engage with them and others in the industry on an ongoing basis, because we want to ensure that people who are afflicted by very rare diseases, and very often young children whose life expectancy may be limited as a result, that they get access to those drugs as quickly as possible. My role is to ensure that we provide the appropriate funding to achieve that. Ireland ranks second among OECD 32 countries for the proportion of pharmaceutical expenditure which is covered by the state, and we are working to improve the efficiency and the speed of decision making. We can only make progress once companies actually apply through the Irish system, once they have received the necessary authorisation from the European Medicines Agency. But this issue is being actively managed. We are making progress, and we will continue to focus on that.
Thank you very much. Now, Deputy Catherine Connolly, please.
Mil mágad ceann comhairle agus ara tá méid díreach ospidéal na Gaillimhe a rís agus an méid ochar atá shrálaithe 62 inniu agus tá ag folann agus ag fáilbáis shrálaithe. Ádas atá muidne ag cant agus ag ceiliúr siúise tarthaí na tábhacán. Minister, I'm glad you're here today as the former Minister for Public Expenditure and Reform and the Minister for Finance, because it directly relates to the issue I'm bringing up as I speak here today with 62 patients on trolleys in a hospital that's billed as a centre of excellence. Earlier in the year we had 73, making it the worst hospital, the third worst, and the worst figures since the INMO started collecting data some time ago. And so why am I raising this here today? Because no progress has been made at all in relation to the hospital in Galway, other than a temporary accident and emergency, which cost 15 or 16 million. And the background to this is in February 15, we were told by Varadkar, at the time Minister for Health, that the hospital, the department, wasn't fit for purpose. And so on, down through, right up to 16 and then 20 in the programme for government, all of the time being told it wasn't fit for purpose. And then we foolishly relaxed because there was an options appraisal that said, build a brand new hospital in Merlin Park. That didn't happen, so they revised that and they said, do up some of the properties on the hospital in Galway. And all of the time, the staff were struggling through trolleys. HIQA visited in February of last year and they thought it was grossly overcrowded with 28 on trolleys. Today there are 62. Now, what that does to staff, not to mention the patients who are suffering and dying. And I don't know, I'd love to ask, including myself, who here in this stall has spent any time on a trolley in a public hospital? I asked it this morning and got no answer. And I think if we did spend a little time, there might be more push to do something about it. And so we're here now looking at a preliminary business assessment case. We're looking at a strategic assessment review. And all of the time, Minister, I'm getting different answers. It would be easier to read The Castle or Metamorphosis by Kafka, which is extremely difficult to read. It would be easier to read it in German, Irish or English than to understand the answers that are coming in relation to the hospital in Galway. We need a new accident and emergency. We need a new maternity ward above. That's functioning in suboptimal conditions, as is the whole hospital. The options appraisal that was carried out in 2019 told us that 64% of the infrastructure in the regional hospital wasn't suitable and 99% in Merlin Park. And all of it more than 40 years old. And all of the time what we're doing is adding to a congested site in a hit and miss fashion with the promise of an accident and emergency, a new children and maternity ward overhead, but no idea when that's going to happen, except your department and your previous department telling us there are new rules, we must do this, but nothing is happening.
Thanks very much, Deputy Connolly. Well, first of all, looking to the medium to long term and the need to ensure that there are adequate facilities and adequate infrastructure at Galway University Hospital. As you know, we are making progress on the delivery of major capital projects that are planned for the hospital. A formal project board has now been established. We are finalising a master plan for the development of the Galway City campus, which will enhance the delivery of essential healthcare services for the population. As you know, this includes a number of key priorities: a new emergency department, which is needed, and women's and children's block, a new laboratory, a new cancer centre, and a bed block on the University Hospital Galway campus. And it will also oversee plans for the Merlin Park campus, including the elective hospital for the region and the surgical hub. Progress is being made. A design team has been appointed. A programme manager has also been appointed. And in addition, the announcement recently by Minister Donnelly of 228 new beds for the hospital will play a very important role in the improvement of the overall infrastructure at the hospital. The new beds will be provided in separate phases, with Galway University Hospital set to benefit from 198 beds between this year and 2028, with a further 30 coming on stream beyond that. But in the short term, we have a job of work to do, because it is not acceptable to us, Deputy, that number of patients are on trolleys today. It is not acceptable, and that is why the government has very significantly increased the resources for the hospital to provide for the growing demand that is there. Staffing has grown by over 740 staff. It's now 4,500. That's an increase in almost 20% since 2020. In addition, the budget over the same period has grown by 21%. So that is a very significant investment by the state, and we need to see the return and we need to see the performance improving as a result. Notwithstanding the trolley numbers that you quote from today, which are not acceptable and will need to be addressed. It should be acknowledged that from January to May of this year, Galway University Hospital trolley count shows a decrease year to date of 15%, and we should, in the interest of balance, acknowledge that as well. And that is part of improvement that is happening across the country. At a national level, progress has been seen across nearly all of the acute hospital sites, excluding and sadly with the exception of University Hospital in Limerick, we've seen reductions year to date of 20%. So the investment is making a difference, and we need to deal with the short term, the here and now, the people who are on the trolleys today, which is not acceptable to government or the HSE, but we also need to have a plan to ensure that the infrastructure is in place for a growing and an ageing population so that we can meet the needs which are increasing all the time.
Thank you, Minister. Deputy Connolly.
Minister, one always loses the will to live, really, in relation to this. 2014, not fit for purpose. 10 years later, not fit for purpose. And you tell me then that there's money going into it. There are 62 people on trolleys. They shouldn't be on trolleys. We live in a republic. You have normalised a situation where patients are on trolleys. I know each of you personally think that's horrific, but it's time to look at what is happening. Stop quoting figures to me. Please. 64 people on trolleys. Would you be on a trolley tomorrow? Would I be? That's the question we ask in a republic. What is it we're doing 10 years after Leo Varadkar said the accident and emergency wasn't fit for purpose? And we have gone around in circles in relation to a strategic assessment review and different answers. I was told it was approved by the Health Executive Board in November 2023, that it was accepted, approved. And then I'm told in a different answer, it went for approval. How in God's name can we stand over a situation 10 years later where we don't even have a deadline for an accident and emergency, not to mention the maternity unit which is going up overhead in a maternity strategy that's coming to an end in 2 years' time. And they're functioning in suboptimal conditions. HIQA said they failed on 2 of 4 essential standards. I don't want to stand here and lambaste the government. I want a public health service that's fit for us to call ourselves a republic.
Minister.
Thanks, Deputy. And the facilities at Galway University Hospital are not fit for purpose. I have been there in recent months, and I am very much aware of the ambitious capital investment plans which we will support because they need to happen, because the scale of demand for services there is only going to go in one direction. And we have to ensure that we have not just the staffing but the physical infrastructure to meet that need. And that is why the new master plan will involve the new emergency department as well as the women's and children's block and a whole range of other facilities, including a cancer centre as well. There has been investment in recent times. We've had the new radiation oncology facility which opened last year, and in addition the hospital has been granted a capital allocation for the creation of a third endoscopy procedure room, including additional facilities as part of that. But we should also recognise, to be fair, that overall trolley numbers are down. They're down nationally. And you've highlighted what is happening today in the hospital. And what I'm saying to you as Minister on behalf of the Government is that is not acceptable to us, and we will address it both in the short but also with a plan for the medium to long-term improvement of services there.
Thank you, Minister. That concludes Leaders' questions. Before moving on to questions on promised legislation by way of